Hello everyone, and welcome to my first video for the unpolitical millennial. As an unpolitical millennial, I don't see politics as the ways to solve the problems in our world. That these problems are far greater and cannot be solved with a left-right paradigm. As you watch this video, I would like to introduce you to the topic that I've presented for today. And this is educational discrimination. For a long time in history, the ways we discriminated and kept people into certain economic classes for the benefit of the wealthy and the rich was through economic segregation, segregation by race, religion, background. There has always been an invested interest by those with excessive wealth to keep the lowest, most impoverished there. Why? Because if someone's hungry and they don't have an option, they will work for a lot less. I truly believe that we have made great strides in equality in certain areas, such as race, religion, economic background, sexual orientation. But we've actually just shifted who we discriminate against. I believe that we've moved to discrimination based on education. That we continue to push to higher and higher levels the need for a higher education, and this is causing great damage to society. It's not what we need. We are in a world that we are lacking resources. We don't have enough energy. We don't have enough food. We don't have enough resources to go around. Yet we continue to balloon the expense of education. We continue to build larger and larger campuses. We continue to add bigger and bigger amounts of housing and education and money that is committed towards education. I truly believe that this is very damaging to our society as a whole. I want to talk about three things here. The privilege of timing. The privilege of timing is probably the easiest form of inequality and discrimination in the education system. The privilege of timing is simply having the background to be able to achieve the results in the time frame that has been ascribed by society. This is essentially a high GPA by the time you're 18. If you do not meet this requirement, guess what? You're done. Your ability to succeed in economics, to succeed in these different fields, is going to be significantly reduced. If you don't complete high school, you're going to be set on a back footing. You're going to be stuck basically trying to play catch up the rest of your life. Why do we discriminate against people at this? It's not people's fault if they develop later and their ability to handle complex subjects may not get there until their 20s. Is it fair to discriminate against someone who comes from a background where it can be a challenge to get to school, to pay for your meals? Do you think that they have the same potential to get those high grades and achieve those marks? Absolutely not. We're going to look at the economic segregation, what is happening in our society. How in primarily the Western world, but you can see it throughout the world, we are now segregating people based on education. And if you don't jump through those hoops in the proper amount of time, you're trapped. Your ability to get out of there is extremely limited. And then we're going to talk about wage slavery, or living wage. However you put it, it's the ability to have a decent life based on your ability to work. All things that we've damaged. This first slide that I want to show is just about the average earnings in 2001 and where people are at. As you can see, the ability to actually get to earn anything when you have less than a high school diploma is extremely limited. The top earners, those with doctorates, have the lowest amount of unemployment. But is this something that we should be celebrating? Absolutely, we need advanced degrees, and absolutely minds should be going towards these things. But do you need a doctorate to run a company? In my professional background, I've dealt with different people that simply their ability to go and get a master's or go and get a doctorate is limited. They come from a background where they got their degree and they were all excited until they realized that essentially they're still stuck in an economic class that they can't get out of. It doesn't matter how good you are at your job, and it doesn't matter how advanced you are. You're still going to be discriminated against because of your education. This allows the people that currently control the system to stay in the system. It means that they get to give their positions to their friends, their family, who come from the same background. If you don't go to the right school and if you don't graduate with the right clubs, you're out. Now, we had to make shifts, and they had to shift back in the 70s when simply basically saying I'm only going to hire my friend from whatever Ivy League school they went to was common. They had to prove that they had to go against all the other people that had the equivalent degrees. So what did they do? They've been raising the cost of education. I just look at this Forbes article from a couple of years ago, and the cost of an education has increased 8 times faster than wages. If we look at here, since 2001, the cost of tuition has tripled. Real wages have not gone up with the same amount. What this really does is it prevents those from the lowest economic classes, and it prohibits them from the ability of climbing. If they do manage to get in and secure a student loan, they are going to be hobbled for decades to come as they try and pay that loan off. This is a system which is designed that those who have large amounts of money are going to be able to get the education on the timetables that are approved by those in power and allow them to keep their jobs. To be honest, if you had mommy or daddy pay for your education and you went to a decent school, even if you got mediocre grades, you are going to be earning 2 to 3 times as someone who is just as talented and just as skilled. Is this really how we want to run society? Is this really a fair way that we should be handling these things? I think it isn't. I truly believe that we are living in a new form of discrimination based on education. It's a way that by continually increasing the costs of education and by continually ramping up the debts that those who do get approved by the system that are completely hamstrung and have no ability to get out from under it until the end of their life, we're getting stuck. One of the last stats that I want to show here for this argument is the amount of people the employment. This goes back to 1993, and it shows the participation of people with less than high school. In 1992, there was 14 million people that were participating in the labor force without a high school education. These were people that could go out and make a living wage and that were able to do so successfully. There was ability back then to be able to get raises, to get promoted. I mean, I don't know how many that you've seen, but there's lots of people that started in the mailroom back in the 1970s with maybe a high school diploma and worked their way up to being a CEO or another high position. Those positions are getting more and more difficult to achieve because it doesn't matter how hard you work and it doesn't matter how good you are in your field. If you don't have the education, and if you don't have the education in the timetables followed immediately by the education in those fields, you're out. I'm sure there's lots of you out there who have degrees in engineering, business, computer sciences, and you weren't able to get in your field because there just wasn't any jobs. Once you're 2 years out of date, guess what? Your degree is essentially void. The system is designed to protect the economic welfare of those in power and prevent the rest of us from having an opportunity to achieve the same results. If we continue on here, you can see that we've plummeted the number of people participating in the labor force without a high school education. There's still lots of people without a high school education. There's tons of them, in fact. If we take a look here, again, labor force, people with a high school education. This is people that have a high school education. Isn't this supposed to be our standard of what means that you are a well-rounded person and ready to enter the workforce? Or have we completely given up on public education? We're just basically going to allow colleges to continually rake over those most vulnerable for excessive tuition and other costs that these universities flank on people. It's dropped from 38 million down to 35 million. And I'm pretty sure that those wages haven't improved. If we go take a look at this next stack here, it's with some college associate's degrees. This is where the majority of our workforce. That actually peaked several years ago. Now, even if you go for technical schooling, that's not enough. You're going to be allowed to fill one position and be stuck in one demographic the rest of your life. Unless you choose to go back and gain even more education and take on even more debt, you're going to be stuck in that same level. This last one from the Bureau of Labor Statistics is truly shocking. Back in 1992, and this is for the United States, there was 30 million people that had a bachelor degree or higher. Today, that number is over 65 million. We've had a twofold increase in the number of people with advanced degrees, and yet inequality is rampant. People are unable to pay for houses. I come from the Millennial generation, where a large amount of millennials, the idea of home ownership, even though they have a degree, even though they have a decent job, is just simply out of reach. We've created a society that allows those in power to continue to control. I downloaded the statistics of what's going on in society. Right here we have the statistics of the amount of people who have graduated high school, and this was for 2017. That was the largest amount that I was able to get. In that time, we actually had a total of around 130 million people graduate from high school. This is the really interesting statistic. I actually did this chart right here. This chart charts the graduation. The first one here is the amount of people that graduated at 18, and that number was 70,000. But if we look right here, the number of people who graduated after 25 is nearly as high. We have a system in place that's really designed to keep those who are most disadvantaged, that need the most help and opportunities, the inability to do so. If 50% of our population isn't graduating high school until after the age of 25, and the employment for anyone who has high school is dropping, what chance do they have? What chance do they have to have success? The fact is, there really isn't any. There are ways that we can address this, though. First of all, I think that we need to look at banning education as a form of discrimination. When we are determining whether a person can or cannot be hired, we need to look at, do they meet the skills required for the job? Not simply did they get a piece of paper. The fact is if you're wealthy, and we've seen this over the last number of years, is that parents can buy their kids whatever education they want. It might cost them $1 million, but they can buy it. If you don't graduate by the time you're 18, you are so far behind the 8 ball that your ability to climb out of it is almost non-existent. We need to change our system. We have too much in the form of higher education. We need to move a lot of vocational schools and college education back to the high school level. The fact is, our young kids are brilliant and smart. The only reason that they are obsessed with using social media is because we don't give them enough opportunity to prove themselves in some of their best developmental years, 15 to 18. We should drop the time of graduation for a high school diploma to 16. We should spend the grade 9, grade 10 to teach people how to be successful in society. You should be focused on courses on math, how interest and finance works, how to get a job, how to write a proper formal letter, how to communicate in the workplace properly. By shifting these requirements back to the high school level, and by allowing a lot more of our courses to be done in the public education system, this will allow students to have much greater success. We need to remove the stigma of high school education as failure. The fact is it's not. The reason why it is seen as a failure because we've allowed it to degrade so much. Our public education system should not just be allowed for those who are in the 8 grades of grade 1 to grade 12. It shouldn't be essentially difficult to get once you hit the age of 19 or 20. These basic courses should be allowed for all of our citizens. When we talk about free education, this is, in my opinion, where free education needs to be. So that those who, maybe it takes till 25 to get their life together, maybe it's 30, 40, or 50, that when they decide to make that move forward, they can do so successfully without being raked over the coals by private schools, by for-profit institutions, and they're able to succeed. I hope you enjoyed this video. This video is not designed to divide, but to enlighten, to give us all an opportunity to better understand the challenges that our fellow people face. We're all humans, we all bleed the same color. We need to work together to have a successful future. I'm the Unpolitical Millennial. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe.